Morning, everyone. Go ahead and get started and be a good steward of everyone's time. This one's a little different if you've ever taken a course with me. I know it's only 30 minutes, and if you know me, I can talk all day. But I would like y'all to feel free to interrupt me if you have questions, type them down in the chat box. Marie's going to be helping me fill some of these questions out. So if a question comes to mind, please do not hesitate to go ahead and ask. So this class today is proposal writing for subcontractors. Now, here we go. And I apologize in advance. Let me go ahead and close out my email because stuff will keep popping up and other things like that. But contrary to popular belief, subcontractors are just important as prime contractors. You guys serve as subject matter experts, used to get the jobs done efficiently and cost effectively. So when we go through this, we're going to just go and look at the different components that you need as a subcontractor when you're doing the proposal for them. Let's do this. Of course, technology's gonna act funny. But first, let's talk about your prime contractors, just high level where we're meeting them. Pre-bid conferences, I will get on my soapbox for about 30 seconds. If you do not attend pre-bid conferences, you are losing. Pre-bid conferences are the option for you to go and you can hear from the purchasing staff, the end user, as well as meet some of the prime contractors that will be bidding on it. You can meet them at outreach events. Some of them host their own trade associations, conferences, and different chamber events. When you're going to them, especially on the pre-bid conference, I always say take your capability statement. That's a small, short introduction of who you are and what you have to offer. Oftentimes on the bidding process, government entities will say, hey, you have to give this amount of your contract to this type of vendor or SWMB or African American or small, however they outline it. So if you fit those classifications, they're already looking for you from the beginning. So those are definitely great places. If you do need help with your capability statement, I would say shameless plug to UTSA PTAC. They do an amazing job with helping small businesses get their capability statement together. And if you ever want somebody to review them, I know I don't mind looking at them and telling you some edits, as well as some other advocates out there for you at the different entities. So you've met the prime contractor. The second big thing I just want to tell you before we get into the proposal writing is understand the scope of work. I know oftentimes you get in, you're like, this is my piece. I can do this part right here. That's all I need to worry about. But that's not true. You need to look at the scope as a whole to see exactly where you're fitting in with everything else, to understand the outline, to understand the SWMB requirements in the initial bid document that the entity enters. Excuse me, they'll have Davis-Bacon requirements, which require you how much you have to pay your staff. So you need to look at all of those different things just to understand the entire scope of work. If you have a question, ask. You really need to ask those questions. That way you have the right bidding information when you do put it in. Okay, so the proposal writing portion, right? So there's about 5 different components. Now, every prime contractor is a little bit different. Some of them are super formalized and they have the submissions, e-bidding online that you go in and fill out, and some are a little less formal. So this is more geared towards a little less formal because you're just submitting a bid to them. So the 5 components we're going to go over is your executive summary, your sample projects, your plan, your price, and your references. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. Your executive summary, it's just your one small page letter. It's from you, the CEO or management, just explaining a little bit about your company. This is the best place to put at your local community stuff you do. If you are a SWMB vendor, please put that in there because that's what they're looking for. Also how you're going to help with their solution. It's really great introduction. There's a lot of companies out there. So if they're not familiar with you, this gives them a short opportunity to get a little bit of familiarity with you, the company culture and things of that nature. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing this. It can be something really, really short, just a 1-pager. I would never suggest going in doing a whole 5 to 10 page executive summary. Your whole proposal and all should be about 5 to 7 pages submitting to a prime. Because if you're thinking about it, when the prime is submitting, they're submitting the 100-page document. So they don't have time to sort through your stuff and all the fluff, right? You just want to get short, straight to the point with your proposals. Has anybody done executive summaries? Can I get a yes or no in the chat box? And a lot of these, once you write one good executive summary, you should be able to keep it going. You might have to tweak it a little bit depending on where you're going. But okay, I'm seeing some yeses come through. But I'm not saying copy and paste it word for word, but pretty much it's tweaked once you get one good executive summary down. The next part is your previous projects. Your previous projects, you just want to have 1 to 2 pages of what you've done in the past. If you were a sub, if you were a prime, if you're showing you're a sub and you completed your projects in time, that's something you want to highlight. Contractors love to hear that you finished your project on budget and on time. If you can emphasize some of that information, it doesn't even have to be in paragraphs. What I've seen some people do is really on this, they'll just have the completed project. You know, all these projects have pictures that they usually like at the end, and they just list it out in bullet points. I say list 3 or 4, just showing that you've done things before. If you are a new contractor and you're like, okay, I haven't done a lot of sub work, but I did work on things before, you can put some of that information in there, but make sure clear what part you had in it. I always say be as transparent as possible. A lot of people are subject matter experts, but they were working with or under someone else. You could have been a sub, but just make sure that you're 100% clear and transparent on that. Will you receive a copy of this handout? Yes, I can get you a copy of this handout, and I'll probably have some additional information I can send to Marie and her team there. That way you can get a copy of it. And I believe it's also being recorded as well. Yes, I see Marie shaking her head. So yes, you'll get a copy. But making sure your previous project list is all laid out really nice. Again, it's quick snippets. You don't want to over fluff this with extra words and things like that, straight to the point. The next part is your proposed plan. Now, your plan is how your approach is going. Your plan is going to include your key personnel. People want to know who's working on their projects, especially here in San Antonio. I say this 1,000 times. We're very touchy-feely. We want to know your family, how they're doing. It's just that type of community versus your Houston or Dallas is where they're more transactional based, right? In and out, like straight business. But here we're just a little bit more on the know and knowing who's working on your projects. Everybody knows everybody. If you're using some proprietary software or some tools or a system that only you guys do, put that in there. But be careful on your plans and things of that nature. If any of your information you're putting in there is confidential, make sure you note that. That way it's not readily shared. But you also want to put your plan. You want to put your schedule. You can put a couple of charts, Gantt charts in there just for you can see. That way they can see how you plan to approach it, how long it's going to take you. As you all know, especially in construction world, your schedule is never what you think it's going to be. Well, I'm not going to say never because I've had some really great construction projects, but there's usually some sort of delay somewhere. So you want to give yourself that buffer time when you're putting your plan together and letting them know everything that you're planning to do. And also your project management, who's going to be their point of contact if something were to go wrong, if the prime does need to contact someone. As well as your deliverables, making those strong dates and your administrative tasks. Also letting them know who's going to be handling your payroll if you need to submit that, because if it's like a federal project, people want to see your payroll information and things of that nature. I will outline all of that stuff in there. When it goes to your key personnels, you can do two different summaries. You can literally just put their name, but I always like to do a real short snippet project-based resume. And so the project-based resume is going to have their name, their titles, any certifications that they have, but they're also just going to have a couple of lists of projects that they've completed successfully and they've overseen or managed. Because when you're hiring someone, you want to know that, this isn't your first rodeo and these people have successfully done this before. And so by going through and listing those project-based, you can put the amount, the project name, the dates that it was completed. Again, you're highlighting anything that was done exceptional as far as under budget, before schedule, things of that nature. You're putting in there that they're good at that. If they have any professional accolades, you definitely want to put that in there with their resume and other information. Again, you want used to be as short as possible. It's not like your old school resume where you copy and paste your job description in there. And next thing you know, your resume is about 50 pages long. You really want to be cognizant of what you're doing and making sure that you're putting all the right information in there. Any questions on this plan? I know I'm talking really fast because I want to make sure I get everything in there. And again, you will get a copy of this and I'll give it to you with some of my extra notes. Okay. All right. The fourth part is your price. So this is a part that I always have to emphasize on. Okay. So when you're looking at your pricing, and I can tell you there is no magic number to get bids and contracts. If that's what you thought I was about to give you, and not that. But when you're looking at your prices, you want to make sure you're absolutely accurate with your pricing. I've said this a lot. When there are forms that they give you to fill out, number one, type it in, do not write it in. If they give you a bid form to bid on a project, type it in, do not write it in. Why? Because people's handwriting, a lot of people write like doctors nowadays. And if you can't really interpret it, that becomes an issue. Also, you want to make sure your unit cost is 100% accurate. If I'm buying 100 widgets and you put a unit price of $3, and then you put the total cost for those 100 widgets at 30,000 because you meant to put a higher number, my unit cost that I'm going to award the contract, I'm awarding the contract off of the unit price. That's standard procurement. So you need to make sure that that's correct. And also, if someone's fumbling on numbers, yes, everyone is human, but when you're getting ready to hire someone, you want to make sure that they're accurate and precise. And if you're starting to fumble on your proposal submission, that's a really big discern to people. Also, when you're putting in your pricing, there's different, you want to do your material and your labor costs. Some people will ask to see your direct buy and what your markup is. And then your labor costs. Remember, we're going back to your Davis-Bacon. That way you're making sure if it is a federal contract, you are meeting those requirements for that labor cost. You can also do some of your prices to task-based. Task-based is, I don't care how long it takes me to do this. Once this is done, this task is done, you're going to pay me X amount of dollars. Now with that, you want to be absolutely careful that you're really understanding, kind of going back to the first couple of slides, understanding the scope of work, because what can go wrong will go wrong in some instances. And so you want to make sure you're not losing at the end, because the whole purpose of getting these contracts and working on this stuff is to actually make money, right? And so when you're putting this together, you want to do it in a one sheet, and then you have your flat rate or your lump sum. It's similar to your task base, but it's just the entirety of the project instead of broken down into tasks and deliverables. But I would keep this to a one sheet. If they don't give you anything, I would suggest going in and just making a nice little one sheet diagram and putting in there. If you are giving something of value and you're adding stuff, put that narrative down there as well. It's not seen too much in the construction world. It's mostly on the consulting side, like, hey, we'll field some of your calls for free and things like that. But on the construction side, it's usually materials and labor and cost based. But always just check your, I know I'm stressing this, check your math twice to make sure you're not messing up on that, because that can make or break you. Is this, someone asked, is this a Word document presentation to the prime, or what software should we use? I would say just make it a Word document and turn it into a PDF and hand it over to them. You really don't have to use a software. I know some people do. Depending on your prime too, I can take that back as well, because some of them will say, hey, go into my system and enter in your prices and that nature if you registered with them. So sometimes they will have a system for you to use. But again, I'm thinking this is just a simple Word document, about 5 to 7 quick little pages. That way you're introducing your company, giving them your prices, and just showing some of your experience. Again, they're going to get a ton of these proposals, so you want to be short, sweet, and straight to the point on that. Good question, though. The next section that I do have, we talk about your references. Okay, so I'm going to get on my purchasing soapbox for like 45 seconds. When you're doing your references, you need to contact your references prior to giving them out. And I'm telling you this because a lot of times people will use references, and as a buyer, when I go out and like, hey, how did this person do on this job? Oh, sorry, I can't comment on that. It's against our company policy. So you might have done an excellent job on a project, but they can't even tell me you did an excellent job because it's against their policy. So understand that. Ways to work around that is, once you complete a job, give them, hey, can you take a second just to do a survey to see how we did as far as our deliverables, our communication. You can put 5 to 7 little questions together and just say, hey, we're doing an internal review. And that could be part of your reference. You can use some of their quotes. It's documents they gave you that you did a good job. But a lot of times, not a lot, a good amount of times, especially from smaller government entities, they don't want to do reference checks because they don't want to be, as they say, liable. But you want to make sure you ask them first and let them know that it's coming. Sometimes people will think it's spam, so they're not looking for it, or, you know, if they get 100 emails a day, it might slip through the cracks. So you do want to contact your references and let them know that this is what you're getting ready to do. A, can you use them? And B, it's on the way. But your reference sheet should include the contact name, the business name, again, a phone number, email, and project name and cost associated with it. Now, keep in mind, your reference section is going to be different from your experience section. Don't make those two the same. Unless you just haven't had that much experience, you can double back on some. But in your best case, you want to have your references that are totally different companies and projects than your completed projects. Again, double check with your references. Sometimes they'll give you a quick little page. That way you just fill out, or sometimes you just need to complete another just Word document, one to 2 page, 1 page really. Again, it's quick and easy. I suggest making it 3 references, and that's usually sufficient for people to do a good reference check. Okay, so you put your 5 to 7 pages together, right? So what do you do next? So your subcontract contracts. I always suggest subcontractors get a contract with a contractor. I know VIA does a really good job with it. When they submit their bid, they have to submit a little contract saying, hey, we're going to use them. And one of the reasons you really want to do this, and you can even submit it with your proposal saying, hey, if you use me, please sign this contract, just saying if you get this job, you are going to use me. What we don't want to see, and what happens sometimes, the prime will use the subcontractor and they will use you for your SWMB qualifications and things of that nature. And then when the job gets to going, they don't use you. And I know I've gotten some phone calls from some contractors who are really upset about it. And unless the owner of the project is made aware, a lot of times it just slips through the cracks. So I would definitely get that in place with them, just saying, basically, it's a small little 1-page agreement. Hey, if you win this project, you're going to use me and my pricing. Second thing, if your prime is awarded the contract, what we really want you to do is get a copy of their payment bonds. And you can ask them for that, because if something goes wrong and you're not getting paid, if I was the owner of the project, I'm not going to cut you a check. I have something with the prime contractor. That's who my contract's with. So you definitely want to get a copy of your prime contractor's bonds, just in case something goes wrong. Of course, it's just insurance. And oftentimes your prime should be carrying you on their insurance when they do that. So you just want to have those things in line for you as a subcontractor, just in case. We hope nothing goes wrong, but just in case something does go a little astray. Any questions? I know I did that really, really fast. I can get on my soapbox. Oh, also, I wanted to make sure, if you are not certified by the RCA, I know they're doing a session later, and I know I mentioned SWIMBY and Hub a couple of times in this. Please, 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 please make sure that you go get certified. You are losing out on some opportunities if you do not.
So it looks like we don't have any questions right now, but maybe we can stay on the line for a couple more minutes to see if anyone has anything. You can just put them in the chat and we'll get them answered here on this session.
Yes. And Maria, did you just want me to email you the slideshow with the notes at the bottom?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Okay, and then I'll try to include I'll make a note, I'll go through some of my files and see if I can find an actual sub proposal. That way I can send away a copy. I know usually when I teach this course, I usually have a handout. That way you can walk away with it and make some notes.
That would be perfect.
On that. Well, if y'all don't have any questions, thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate y'all stopping in. Hopefully you learned something that you haven't heard before, or if I reiterated something, if you've taken one of my classes before, as they say, I relearned you something.
Okay, we actually do have one question coming in. From Sarah Navarro. Did you say to get a copy of the Prime's bonds?
Yes, to get a copy of the prime bonds. And for those of you slightly new, the way the bonds are working is if they have a payment bond and you've done your job and you haven't gotten paid for your invoices that you've submitted and it's just going astray and they haven't answered you, what you can do is you can actually go talk to the bonding agency and say, hey, I've completed this work. It was 30, 60 days ago and I haven't gotten paid. And what the bonding agency will do, will talk to the vendor. I'm like, hey, you need to pay them. If the vendor's still, acting kind of crazy with you, the bonding agency will actually pay you, and they will actually, I guess, get in trouble. It's kind of like calling mom on the prime, right? Like they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So you want to get a copy of that ahead of time. Once they are awarded the contracts, you can call the owner of the project and say, hey, I was listed on the contract as a sub. Can I get a copy of the bond because we're having issues? You can do it that way as well, or you can go straight to the prime. Either way, you can get a copy of those bonds. Our mechanics liens not usable. I don't want to answer that question because I'm not 100% sure, but sometimes people do use liens on projects. And I'm not familiar, to be honest, with the whole lien process. So I do not want to give you any bad information. If you're going into liens and things, you can always talk to your legal team about those. You're having that problem right now with the GC and the school district. Definitely talk. So a lot of the school districts, especially like SAISD, they have a wonderful lady, April, there. She's your advocate for school districts for SWIMBY. So talk to her, talk to the project manager, the owner of it, and tell them you're having issues and you need to see their bond. Sometimes the primes are getting such large contracts. If the owners come into them, I'm like, hey, why am I getting phone calls from your subs about not payment? And that might speed up some process because now they're getting in trouble with the owner. As owners, I like to just award the contract and let y'all do what you do. I don't want any mess. I don't want no phone calls. I don't want no extra paperwork, right? And so that's noted and that's making the prime look bad. So even sometimes telling the owner, although the owner cannot make the prime pay, the bond agency can make them. That was a great question to bring up. To Marie says, make sure, James said, make sure you preserve your lien rights and give the proper notice and copy the owner on all the correspondence. Keeping the owner aware of what's going on. That sounds like good information to me. Again, that way we're aware of everything that's going on with the project.
Okay, I think that's all the questions that we had for right now.
And I think y'all have a bonding session too. Is it today or tomorrow, Marie?
Yes, that is going to be tomorrow, Friday.
Yeah. So make sure y'all jump in that for some of your bonding issues. And I'll put that on my, well, I'm sure your bonding person will have some step-by-step information, but I have a cheat sheet for contacting bonds. I might just shoot your way to Maria.
And Sarah had another question. Where is that info on liens?
James, can you help us out? The information on liens, is there a certain place that most people go to? Or is it just like the county website or? You might be typing. Yeah, James, can you put your email in the chat? And y'all all have my email information. Thank you. If you can see it in there, James put his email in there, Marie, for you. And if y'all have any questions or comments or later questions, feel free to contact me. I will send Marie that information. And shameless plug, if you are not registered with Workforce Solutions Alamo as a vendor, definitely go over to our website and do that. We are now using Bonfire for our projects. We actually have 16 locations that I oversee on the facility side. So we are doing renovations, we are doing on-call maintenance and things of that nature. So there's definitely some opportunities out there for you guys. So please head over to that website and register, and I look forward from hearing from you guys.
Yes, thank you so much, Latifa, for your excellent presentation. Like she mentioned, you have our contact information, and if you wanted to get in touch, you can email anyone from the Maestro team, and we can help facilitate that connection. But if there are no other questions, that concludes this session. Our next session will begin at 9:45. Thank you so much.
Bye.